The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Their crystalline ships moved through space like predators, sleek and deadly, leaving behind trails of conquered worlds and broken civilizations. The Empire stretched across 47 star systems, each one bending the knee to the crystal throne on Zephyr Prime. Admiral Kex then stood on the command deck of the flagship Eternal Dominance, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger in the view screen. His 6 arms moved gracefully across the control interface, each digit ending in razor-sharp talons that could slice through metal. The Zephyrians were apex predators by evolution, standing 12 feet tall, with exoskeletons that could deflect most energy weapons. "This world appears unremarkable," commented his tactical officer, Velcor, studying the sensor readings. Single-species dominance, primitive technology, no energy shields protecting their cities. Kexthan's mandibles clicked in amusement. The sound echoed through the bridge, causing several junior officers to flinch. Indeed, these humans barely qualify as space-capable. Their fastest ships would take centuries to reach even their nearest stellar neighbors. How they managed to attract our attention is beyond comprehension. The truth was simpler than the Admiral realized. Earth hadn't attracted their attention through any grand gesture or technological achievement. A Zephyrian scout ship had detected unusual quantum signatures while mapping this spiral arm of the galaxy. The signatures suggested the possibility of rare metals needed for their newest generation of weapons. "Sir, we're receiving multiple communication attempts from the surface," reported the communications officer. "They appear to be trying to establish diplomatic contact." Diplomatic? Kexthan's 4 eyes gleamed with predatory hunger. "How amusing. Inform the planetary leaders that they have exactly 1 solar rotation to surrender unconditionally. After that, we begin the harvest." The harvest was the Zephyrian term for their standard conquest protocol. It involved 3 phases: elimination of military assets, collection of useful resources and technology, and, finally, processing of the population. Some species were deemed useful enough to serve as slaves. Others were simply eliminated to make room for Zephyrian settlements. On Earth, the message was received by every major government simultaneously. President Sarah Chun stood in the Situation Room beneath the White House, surrounded by military advisors and world leaders connected via secure video links. The translator algorithm had worked perfectly, leaving no ambiguity about the aliens' intentions. "One day," she said quietly, "they're giving us 1 day to surrender our entire world." General Morrison leaned forward, his weathered face grim. "Madam President, our best estimates suggest their ship alone could level every major city on Earth. Our nuclear arsenal might scratch their hull plating. What about the International Space Station? Our lunar bases?" They detected and cataloged every artificial satellite we have in orbit, including ones we thought were secret. The general's voice carried decades of military experience, and Sarah could hear the defeat creeping in. "These beings are so far beyond us technologically that resistance seems impossible." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's leading xenobiologist despite never having studied actual aliens before, cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should consider their offer. If we surrender, they might allow our species to survive." "Survive as what?" snapped Colonel Rodriguez from Space Command. "Slaves? Experimental subjects? We know nothing about their culture or intentions beyond conquest." The debate continued for hours while around the globe, humanity struggled to comprehend their situation. Television broadcasts showed people praying, rioting, or simply going about their daily lives as if nothing had changed. Children played in parks while their parents watched the sky with fearful eyes. In Tokyo, 7-year-old Hiro Nakamura sat in his small apartment, working on a puzzle while his mother prepared dinner. He didn't understand why she kept crying or why his father hadn't come home from work. The news kept showing pictures of a giant crystal ship hanging in space like a sword over their world. "Mama, when will Papa come home?" Hiro asked, looking up from his puzzle. Yuki Nakamura knelt beside her son, gathering him into a fierce hug. Soon, little one. Papa is working very hard right now to keep us safe. It wasn't entirely a lie. Hiro's father was indeed working, along with millions of other humans around the world. Scientists, engineers, military personnel, and ordinary citizens were all desperately searching for some way to defend their planet. The problem was simple. Humanity's most advanced weapons were like stone knives against the Zephyrian Empire's technology. Back on the flagship, Admiral Kex then reviewed the intelligence reports gathered by their sensors. These humans are more numerous than initially estimated, he noted. Nearly 8 billion individuals across their single world. Shall we revise the harvest projections? Asked Velcor. No, the projections remain unchanged. We need only a few thousand specimens for biological research. The rest will be eliminated to make room for our new mining operations. The Zephyrians had perfected the art of conquest through overwhelming technological superiority. They had never encountered a species that could meaningfully resist their advance. Their exoskeletons were nearly indestructible. Their ships could destroy planets, and their weapons could kill from distances measured in star systems. What they hadn't encountered was a species quite like humanity. As Earth's day of grace ticked toward its end, something unexpected began happening in cities around the world. Instead of panic or mass surrender, humans began organizing. Not just governments and militaries, but ordinary people. Teachers evacuated students to underground shelters while mechanics and engineers worked frantically to weaponize anything they could find. In rural areas, farmers and hunters gathered whatever weapons they possessed. In urban centers, police and firefighters coordinated evacuation plans that could save as many people as possible when the attack began. Scientists shared decades of research freely, hoping someone, somewhere, might find a weakness in alien technology. Most importantly, parents everywhere held their children a little tighter and made the same silent promise Yuki Nakamura made to little Hiro, that they would fight for their children's future with everything they had. The Zephyrians, monitoring these activities through their sensors, found the behavior curious but irrelevant. What could primitive weapons do against their superior technology? They had conquered species with energy weapons, planetary defense shields, and faster-than-light travel. These humans had none of those advantages. As the deadline approached, President Chun stood before the cameras one final time. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "We face an enemy beyond our comprehension. They have given us a choice, surrender or fight. I know what choice our ancestors would have made. I know what choice we must make. We are humanity. We do not surrender our children's future to anyone." The transmission ended just as the deadline expired. Admiral Kex then watched the primitive broadcast with amusement before giving the order that would begin humanity's darkest hour. Begin the harvest. Start with their largest population centers. The first energy beam struck London at precisely midnight Greenwich Mean Time. The ancient city, home to 9 million people, simply vanished in a flash of coherent energy. The Thames boiled away to steam, and where Parliament had stood for centuries, only a perfectly smooth crater remained. Then came Paris, then Delhi, then Tokyo. Each strike took only seconds and eliminated millions of lives with casual efficiency. The Zephyrians targeted population centers first, intending to break humanity's will to resist before moving on to resource extraction. But something went wrong with their calculations in Tokyo. The energy beam, precisely calibrated to eliminate the city center, encountered an unexpected quantum resonance in the upper atmosphere. A solar flare, one of the largest in recorded history, struck Earth's magnetosphere at the exact moment the beam fired. The energy weapons targeting system, confused by the electromagnetic interference, shifted its aim by exactly 1.7 kilometers. Instead of hitting the government district as planned, the beam struck a small residential area in the Shibuya district. Among the buildings that vanished in that instant was a small apartment where a 7-year-old boy had been working on a puzzle while his mother prepared dinner. Hiro Nakamura died instantly, painlessly, along with his mother and 3,000 other innocent people. His father, working late at the defense ministry, felt the ground shake and saw the flash of light illuminate the night sky. Racing home through streets filled with chaos and fear, he found only a perfect circular crater where his family's apartment building had stood. Yuki Tanaka's husband, Dr. Kenji Nakamura, was a quiet man who taught mathematics at Tokyo University. He had never raised his voice in anger, never thrown a punch, never even killed an insect if he could avoid it. But as he knelt at the edge of that crater, holding a small puzzle piece that had somehow survived the destruction, something fundamental changed in the fabric of reality. Because what the Zephyrians didn't understand about humans was simple, but crucial. They were a species that would burn down the entire galaxy to protect their children. And someone had just killed a human child. Dr. Kenji Nakamura had always believed in the power of mathematics to explain the universe. Numbers were clean, logical, and predictable. They followed rules that never changed, regardless of emotion or circumstance. But as he knelt beside the crater that had swallowed his family, he discovered that some equations couldn't be solved with logic alone. The small puzzle piece in his hand was from a children's set depicting Earth's solar system. It showed Saturn with its rings, the piece hero had been trying to place when the world ended. Kenji closed his eyes and felt something break inside his chest, a sound like glass shattering in the depths of his soul. Around him, Tokyo burned. The alien attack had left the city in chaos, with emergency services overwhelmed and millions of people fleeing toward any shelter they could find. But Kenji didn't move. He sat at the edge of his family's grave and began to calculate. First, he calculated the trajectory of the energy beam that had killed his son. Using the crater's dimensions and the known physics of energy displacement, he could determine the exact angle and power of the weapon. Then, he calculated the orbital mechanics of the alien ship responsible for firing it. As the numbers flowed through his mind, a terrible clarity began to emerge. The attack hadn't been random or chaotic. It had been precisely planned and executed with mathematical perfection. Every strike had been calculated to cause maximum psychological damage while eliminating key population centers. But there had been an error. A tiny miscalculation caused by solar interference that had shifted one beam's trajectory by 1.7 kilometers. His family had died not because they were military targets or strategic assets, but because of a rounding error in an alien computer. The Zephyrians had killed his child by mistake. That realization should have been comforting somehow, but instead it filled Kenji with a rage so pure and focused that it felt like staring into the heart of a star. These creatures had treated his son's life as a statistical irrelevance, a margin of error in their grand design of conquest. Standing up slowly, Kenji slipped the puzzle piece into his pocket and began walking toward the university. If he was going to make them pay for their mistake, he would need access to the quantum physics lab. Across the globe, the Zephyrian assault continued with ruthless efficiency. By dawn, 17 major cities had been reduced to smoking craters. The death toll was approaching 50 million people, and humanity's military forces had proven utterly incapable of mounting any meaningful resistance. Admiral Kex then reviewed the progress reports with satisfaction. "Excellent work," he told his officers. "At this rate, we should complete the initial harvest within 3 rotations." "Sir," interrupted the sensor operator, "we're detecting unusual activity at several of their research facilities. Energy signatures that don't match their known technology. Elaborate. Multiple locations are showing quantum field fluctuations, particle acceleration events, and what appears to be controlled fusion reactions. The humans seem to be conducting experiments despite our attacks." Kexton's mandibles clicked dismissively. "Desperate attempts to develop new weapons, no doubt. Monitor them, but don't waste ammunition on non-military targets. Let them exhaust themselves trying to match our technology." What the Admiral didn't realize was that humanity wasn't trying to match Zephyrian technology. They were trying to understand it. In laboratories and research facilities that had survived the initial assault, human scientists were working with a desperate intensity born of absolute necessity. They shared data freely across all nations and institutions, abandoning decades of secrecy and competition in favor of species survival. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been studying theoretical physics at CERN when the attacks began. Now, she stood in a partially damaged facility, coordinating with colleagues from every major research institution on Earth. The aliens had ignored CERN, apparently viewing it as non-threatening, which meant they still had access to the most powerful particle accelerator on the planet. "We've identified patterns in their energy signatures," she reported to the Emergency Scientific Council. "Their weapons operate on principles we understand, but at power levels we've never achieved." "Can we duplicate them?" asked Dr. Sarah Kim from the remnants of MIT. "Not duplicate, but we might be able to interfere with them." Elena's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up data from the Tokyo strike. "Look at these readings. When solar radiation interfered with their targeting system, it caused a displacement error. Their technology isn't invulnerable to electromagnetic interference. How much interference would we need to generate?" The question came from Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who had been evacuated from Tokyo and was now coordinating biological research efforts. "More than anything we've ever built," Elena admitted. "We need to create a controlled electromagnetic pulse with the power output of a stellar flare." The room fell silent. What she was describing was theoretically possible, but practically impossible. The energy requirements alone would drain the power grids of entire continents. That's when Dr. Kenji Nakamura's quiet voice came through the communication system from Tokyo University's quantum lab. "I may have a solution." Kenji had been working for 18 hours straight, fueled by grief and mathematical precision. His colleagues had evacuated when the attacks began, but he had remained behind, alone in the laboratory with equipment worth millions of dollars and a mind focused on a single problem. "Dr. Nakamura," Elena said carefully, "the quantum lab was in the strike zone. How are you still operational?" "The lab is underground, 50 meters below street level. We built it that way to shield experiments from cosmic radiation." Kenji's voice was calm, almost eerily so. "I've been analyzing the weapon signatures from yesterday's attacks." He transmitted his data to the Emergency Council, and Elena felt her breath catch. Kenji hadn't just identified the energy patterns of the alien weapons. He had reverse-engineered the fundamental principles behind their operation. "This is impossible," Dr. Kim whispered. "This level of analysis would take years with our best supercomputers." "I had motivation," Kenji replied simply. "And I discovered something interesting. Their weapons create a quantum entanglement field before firing. Every shot requires the ship to briefly synchronize its weapon systems with local quantum fluctuations." Elena began to understand what he was suggesting. If we could disrupt that synchronization, we could turn their own weapons against them. But it would require generating a quantum cascade event across a significant portion of local space-time. "That's not possible with current technology," protested another scientist. "It is if we use their own power sources against them," Kenji continued. "I've calculated the resonance frequencies needed to destabilize their quantum entanglement fields. We can build a device to generate those frequencies using their own energy transmissions." "What kind of device?" There was a long pause before Kenji answered. "A quantum feedback amplifier. It would need to be placed within range of their primary weapons array and activated at the precise moment they attempt to fire their main cannon." Elena felt a chill as she realized what he was suggesting. That's a suicide mission. Whoever carries the device would need to get close enough to their flagship to touch it. "Yes," Kenji agreed quietly. "That will be necessary." The scientists spent the next 6 hours refining Kenji's calculations and building the device. It was surprisingly simple in design, a crystalline matrix that could store and amplify quantum energy signatures. The complexity lay not in its construction, but in its application. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian assault continued. More cities fell, more millions died, and humanity's military forces were systematically eliminated. But something else was happening that the aliens failed to notice. Across the globe, humans were adapting. Children were evacuated to deep underground shelters while adults organized resistance cells. Engineers rigged explosive devices from agricultural equipment. Hackers attempted to interfere with alien communication systems using modified radio telescopes. Most importantly, word of Dr. Nakamura's plan began spreading through the survivor networks. The device couldn't be transmitted digitally or built remotely. Someone would have to deliver it by hand to the alien flagship. The call went out quietly, person to person, through encrypted channels that the Zephyrians couldn't intercept. Earth needed a volunteer for a one-way mission to save the human race. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of people volunteered immediately. Parents who had lost children, soldiers whose units had been eliminated, scientists who understood the technical requirements, and ordinary civilians who simply refused to watch their species be exterminated without a fight. But there was one volunteer who had advantages the others lacked. Colonel Maria Santos had been the pilot of humanity's most advanced spacecraft, the experimental vessel Aurora that was designed to test faster-than-light travel concepts. The ship was currently hidden in a lunar crater, protected by sensor-dampening technology that had kept it undetected during the alien attacks. More importantly, Colonel Santos was the only human who had ever successfully piloted a craft through a controlled quantum field manipulation. If anyone could deliver Dr. Nakamura's device to the alien flagship, it was her. "The device is ready," Kenji reported as the volunteer selection process concluded. "But I need to make one modification to ensure proper activation." "What kind of modification?" Elena asked. Kenji was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made everyone listening understand the true cost of their desperate plan. "The device needs to be activated by someone who understands the quantum mathematics involved. It requires real-time calculations during the approach to compensate for the target ship's defensive measures." Elena felt her stomach drop. "You're saying the person who delivers it needs to be a quantum physicist?" "Yes. And since I designed the device, I'm the only one who can guarantee it will work properly." "Dr. Nakamura, you don't have pilot training. You wouldn't survive the approach flight." "I don't need to survive the approach flight," Kenji replied quietly. "I just need to survive long enough to activate the device." That's when Colonel Santos made her final decision. "Dr. Nakamura, how long would it take you to teach me the activation procedure?" "Colonel, the mathematics involved require years of study to fully understand." "I don't need to understand them. I just need to follow them. Can you program the calculations into the ship's computer?" There was a long pause. "Yes, but if anything goes wrong, if the alien ship's defenses create unexpected quantum interference, you need to make real-time adjustments then you're coming with me." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Everyone understood what Colonel Santos was proposing. Two people on a suicide mission had twice the chance of success as one person, but it also meant that Earth would lose two of its most capable defenders. "Colonel," Elena said carefully, "if you and Dr. Nakamura are both lost, then we die knowing we gave humanity its best chance," Santos replied. "And if we succeed, the Zephyrians will learn that killing human children has consequences." In his underground laboratory, Dr. Kenji Nakamura looked at the puzzle piece on his desk and made his decision. His son would never grow up, never graduate from school, never have children of his own. But maybe, if this plan worked, other children would have that chance. "Colonel Santos, when can you be ready to launch?" "The Aurora can be prepped and ready within 6 hours. Then, let's go kill some aliens." Admiral Kex Than was reviewing harvest reports when the sensors detected an unusual energy signature emerging from Earth's moon. It appeared to be a small spacecraft, primitive by Zephyrian standards, but more advanced than anything they had seen from the species. "Interesting," he mused. "It seems the humans had one final surprise hidden away. Should we destroy it, Admiral?" Kex Than's 4 eyes studied the sensor readings. The craft was tiny, barely large enough for a crew of 2, and was traveling on a direct intercept course with the flagship. Its energy output suggested it was unarmed and posed no threat to their shields. No, he decided. Let approach. I'm curious to see what these humans think they can accomplish with such a primitive vessel. It may provide valuable intelligence about their remaining capabilities. What Admiral Kex then didn't realize was that sometimes the most dangerous weapons came in small packages, and that a human father's love for his dead child could power engines of destruction that would shake the foundations of an empire that thought itself untouchable. The Aurora cut through space like a silver needle, its experimental engines leaving barely detectable energy signatures as it approached the massive Zephyrian flagship. Inside the cramped cockpit, Colonel Maria Santos kept her hand steady on the controls while Dr. Kenji Nakamura ran final calculations on the quantum feedback amplifier. Distance to target, 18,000 kilometers, and closing, Maria reported. Still no response from their defensive systems. Kenji looked up from his instruments, surprise evident in his voice. They're letting us approach. Why aren't they firing? Because they think we're harmless, Maria replied grimly. A tiny ship with no visible weapons, heading straight for a vessel that could destroy planets. They probably think we're surrendering. The Zephyrian flagship Eternal Dominance stretched before them like a floating crystal city. The ship was over 20 kilometers long, its faceted hull reflecting starlight in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Weapon ports along its surface could each level a city block, and its main cannon was capable of cracking a planet's crust. Quantum Cascade device is online, Kenji reported. All systems showing green. But I need to warn you, Colonel, once we get within 5 kilometers of their hull, they'll detect the quantum energy signature. Their defensive systems will activate automatically. How long will we have? 43 seconds from detection to firing solution. Less if their targeting computers are as advanced as I suspect. Maria nodded and increased their approach speed. Through her headset, she could hear transmissions from Earth's remaining defense networks. The Zephyrians had destroyed most major cities and were beginning their second phase operations, resource extraction and population processing. Reports filtered in of massive mining ships landing on every continent, their crews setting up extraction facilities with ruthless efficiency. Humans who survived the initial bombardment were being rounded up and sorted. The strong were sent to labor camps. The weak were simply eliminated. Children were being separated from their parents. That last report made Maria's hands tighten on the controls. She thought of her own daughter, killed in the Mexico City strike along with Maria's parents and sister. The entire Santos family, 3 generations wiped out in a flash of alien energy. 15,000 kilometers, she announced. Their weapons are tracking us, but they haven't powered up yet. Through the view screen, they could see the flagship's true enormity. The ship wasn't just a vessel. It was a mobile fortress designed to project power across stellar distances. Smaller craft moved around it like insects around a hive, ferrying resources and personnel between the flagship and the extraction ships on Earth's surface. Kenji, Maria said quietly, "Tell me about your son." The physicist looked up from his instruments, surprised by the personal question. Hiro, he was 7 years old, loved puzzles and mathematics like his father. His mother said he would grow up to be a scientist. What was his favorite puzzle? The solar system said. He was working on it when Kenji's voice trailed off, but he pulled the small puzzle piece from his pocket. He never got to finish it. Maria smiled sadly. My daughter Elena loved space too. She wanted to be an astronaut. Said she was going to fly to Mars and build cities there. She paused. I guess in a way, we're both fulfilling our children's dreams. We're the furthest humans have ever traveled from Earth. 10,000 kilometers, Kenji reported. Their weapons are powering up now. They know we're not surrendering. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominance, Admiral Kex then watched the approaching human vessel with growing irritation. What are they trying to accomplish? Their ship carries no weapons capable of penetrating our shields. Perhaps it's a reconnaissance mission, suggested Velcor, attempting to gather intelligence for future resistance efforts. Then they are fools. There will be no future resistance. Kex then gestured to the tactical display. Fire a warning shot. Disable their engines, but leave them intact. I want to interrogate the crew before we execute them. The flagship's point defense systems swiveled toward the Aurora, energy coursing through their targeting matrices. But before they could fire, something unexpected happened. Admiral, the sensor operator's voice was sharp with alarm. The human vessel is generating quantum field distortions. Energy readings are off the scale. What kind of quantum fields? Unknown configuration, sir. It's unlike anything in our databases. Kexthan's mandibles clicked with sudden concern. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Zephyrians had never encountered technology they couldn't immediately classify and counter. Their empire was built on technological superiority so complete that enemy weapons might as well be throwing rocks. Destroy them. Now, 5,000 kilometers, Maria announced as the flagship's main batteries swiveled toward them. Kenji, whatever you're going to do it fast. Activating quantum cascade device in 3, 2, 1. The device Dr. Nakamura had built was deceptively simple in appearance, a crystal matrix no larger than a softball. But when it activated, it began manipulating the fundamental forces that held reality together. Quantum fields rippled outward from the Aurora, invisible waves of energy that passed through conventional matter like it didn't exist. They swept across the Zephyrian flagship's hull, penetrating shields and armor that had never been breached by any weapon. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The flagship's weapons continued to track the approaching human vessel, energy building toward a firing solution that would vaporize the Aurora and everything aboard it. Then the cascade began. Deep within the Zephyrian ship's core, quantum entanglement fields that had operated flawlessly for centuries began to fluctuate. The fluctuations were tiny at first, barely detectable even by the ship's sophisticated sensors. But quantum effects had a way of amplifying themselves. What's happening to our weapons array? Admiral Kex then demanded as status lights began flashing amber across the bridge. Unknown, sir. We're showing power fluctuations in the primary batteries. The targeting computers are compensating. Compensating for what? Before anyone could answer, the first explosion rocked the flagship. It wasn't a large detonation, just a secondary power coupling overloading in the starboard weapons bay. But it was followed by another explosion, and another, as the quantum cascade spread through the ship's systems like a virus. Report. Kexton roared. The quantum entanglement fields that power our weapons are destabilizing. The cascade effect is spreading through the ship's systems. The engineer's voice was high with panic. If it reaches the main reactor, shut down all quantum systems immediately. We can't, sir. The shutdown protocols require quantum field manipulation. We're locked into the cascade. Aboard the Aurora, Kenji watched his instruments with grim satisfaction. It's working. Their quantum systems are beginning to cannibalize themselves. How long until their weapons are offline? 30 seconds for the main batteries. 2 minutes for total system failure. Maria nodded and continued their approach. Around them, space began to light up as the Zephyrian flagship's weapons array suffered cascading failures. Energy meant to destroy planets was instead tearing the ship apart from within. 3,000 kilometers, Maria reported. Their point defense systems are trying to target us, but their targeting computers keep failing. The quantum cascade is interfering with their ability to distinguish us from background radiation, Kenji explained. To their sensors, we're becoming invisible. On the flagship, Admiral Kex then watched his empire's greatest weapon tear itself apart. Status reports flooded the bridge as system after system went offline. The ship's massive engines sputtered and died. Life support began failing on lower decks. Even the artificial gravity was fluctuating. Sir, we need to abandon ship. Velcor shouted over the sound of explosions echoing through the hull. The main reactor is showing signs of quantum cascade contamination. No, Kexton's claws dug into his command console. This is impossible. These humans are primitives. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. 2,000 kilometers, Maria announced. Through the view screen, they could see secondary explosions blooming across the flagship's surface like deadly flowers. Kenji, are you sure this device will work at point-blank range? The closer we get, the more effective it becomes. But there's something else you need to know. Kenji's voice was quiet. When I built this device, I programmed it to accomplish more than just disabling their ship. Maria felt a chill despite the cockpit's warmth. What else does it do? It creates a permanent quantum instability in their technology. Any Zephyrian ship that comes within 10,000 kilometers of the Cascade epicenter will suffer the same system failures. You're talking about their entire fleet. Yes, but the device needs to be manually guided to the exact center of their reactor core to achieve maximum effect. And once it's activated at close range, Kenji met her eyes. The quantum cascade will consume everything within a 5-kilometer radius. Maria understood. They weren't just on a suicide mission to disable one ship. They were about to create a weapon that would make it impossible for the Zephyrians to operate anywhere in Earth's solar system. 1,000 kilometers, she announced. Beginning final approach. The Aurora dove toward the flagship's reactor section like a guided missile. Around them, the great ship continued to tear itself apart as quantum forces it had relied on for millennia turned against it. Explosions lit up the hull as weapon after weapon overloaded and destroyed itself. 500 kilometers. Their reactor core is directly ahead. Beginning final activation sequence, Kenji reported. His hands moved across the control panel with steady precision, even as he knew each command brought them closer to death. Quantum Cascade device is charging for maximum output. Kenji, Maria said quietly, I want you to know that your son would be proud of you. And your daughter will be proud of you, Colonel. 200 kilometers. Through the view screen, they could see the flagship's reactor core, a massive crystal structure at the heart of the vessel that pulsed with barely contained energy. It was beautiful in its own way, like looking into the heart of a star. 100 kilometers. Their point defense systems have completely failed. 50 kilometers. Beginning final approach. 20 kilometers. Device is fully charged and ready for deployment. 10 kilometers. Maria's finger hovered over the final activation control. Around them, space was filled with the wreckage of Zephyrian technology as the flagship's weapons array continued to explode. But she knew that even this damage wouldn't be enough to save Earth. The aliens had other ships, other fleets that could finish what this one had started. Unless they made sure no Zephyrian technology could ever threaten humanity again. 5 kilometers. We're inside their final defensive perimeter. Kenji, are you ready? Yes. Maria, it's been an honor flying with you. The honor was mine, Dr. Nakamura. Maria pressed the activation control. The quantum cascade device discharged every erg of energy it had accumulated during their approach, releasing it in a precisely controlled burst that penetrated the flagship's reactor core and began rewriting the fundamental quantum relationships that governed Zephyrian technology. For exactly 2.3 seconds, the device created a bubble of altered space-time where the laws of physics themselves became weapons against the aliens who had thought themselves untouchable. Then the Aurora, the flagship Eternal Dominance, and everything within 5 kilometers simply ceased to exist in any meaningful sense, consumed by forces that turned matter itself into pure energy. But the quantum cascade Dr. Kenji Nakamura had created in memory of his murdered son didn't end with that explosion. It was just beginning. Across the solar system, every Zephyrian ship felt the pulse of altered reality spreading outward from Earth at the speed of light. Their quantum computers began registering impossible readings. Their weapons started experiencing targeting failures. Their engines began showing signs of the same instabilities that had destroyed their flagship. The empire that had conquered 47 star systems in 3,000 years suddenly found its technology turning against itself, and they had no idea how to stop it. On Earth's surface, human survivors looked up at the sky and watched as alien ships began falling from orbit like broken toys. The Zephyrians had learned too late that there was a price for killing human children. And that price was everything. The wave of quantum disruption spread through space at the speed of light, an invisible tsunami that rewrote the fundamental laws governing Zephyrian technology. What had taken Dr. Kenji Nakamura 18 hours to calculate, and Colonel Maria Santos 43 minutes to deliver, was now unleashing 3,000 years of accumulated karma on the galaxy's most feared empire. Captain Zexval commanded the extraction ship Harvester Prime, one of 12 massive vessels strip-mining Earth's continents for rare metals. His ship was currently processing the ruins of what humans had called Australia, its quantum drills pulverizing mountains and separating useful materials from worthless rock. The quantum pulse hit his ship exactly 11 minutes and 37 seconds after the flagship's destruction. "Captain," the engineering officer's voice cracked with panic. "Our quantum core is showing massive instabilities. Power output is fluctuating beyond safe parameters." Zexval's 4 eyes focused on the main display as status lights shifted from green to amber to red across his ship's systems. "Compensate with secondary power coupling." "Sir, the secondary systems are failing too. It's like our own technology is turning against us." Through the bridge viewports, Zexval could see the other extraction ships in orbit around Earth experiencing the same crisis. Ships that had operated flawlessly for centuries were suddenly suffering cascading system failures that their engineers couldn't explain or stop. "Engineering, can you identify the source of these malfunctions?" "Negative, sir. All systems are reporting normal operations, but the quantum field interactions are completely chaotic. It's as if the fundamental constants of our technology have been altered." Zexval felt a chill of recognition. During his academy training, he had studied historical records of the few species that had ever managed to resist Zephyrian conquest. None had succeeded, but some had managed to destroy themselves rather than surrender. Could these humans have developed some form of quantum suicide weapon? "Sir, incoming transmission from the surface. It's from our mining operations." "Put it through." The voice of Commander Thekran, leader of the ground-based mining operation, filled the bridge with barely controlled panic. "Captain, we have a serious problem down here. Our equipment is malfunctioning across all sites. The quantum drills have shut down, our transportation systems are failing, and our weapons aren't responding to targeting commands." "Are your personnel secure?" "For now, but the humans are beginning to organize. Without our technological advantages." Thekran's voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. For 3,000 years, Zephyrian conquest had relied on overwhelming technological superiority. Their weapons, their ships, their equipment were so advanced compared to their enemies that victory was always assured. But if that technology was failing... "Captain," the sensor operator's voice was sharp with alarm. "I'm detecting massive energy buildup in the ship's quantum core. If the containment field fails..." Zexval didn't need the officer to finish the sentence. A quantum core breach would turn his ship into a miniature star, destroying not only the vessel, but everything within a 100-kilometer radius. "All crew to evacuation pods. Abandon ship immediately." But even as he gave the order, Zexval realized the terrible irony of their situation. The evacuation pods relied on the same quantum technology that was failing throughout the ship. They might escape the core breach only to drift helplessly in space as their life support systems slowly died. Similar scenes were playing out across the solar system as the quantum cascade contaminated every piece of Zephyrian technology it encountered. The patrol ships that had been guarding the outer planets found their engines sputtering to a halt. The communication relays that connected the fleet to the Empire's central command began broadcasting nothing but static. Most critically, the faster-than-light communication system that allowed the Zephyrian Empire to coordinate its vast territories went completely silent. On the Imperial throne world of Zephyr Prime, Emperor Kex, then, received the last coherent transmission from the Earth Conquest Fleet just moments before the quantum cascade reached critical mass. My lord, Admiral Kex then's voice was distorted by growing static. The humans have deployed some form of quantum warfare. Our entire fleet is experiencing total system failure. The flagship has been destroyed, and we're losing ships across the entire task force. The transmission cut off in a burst of electronic noise. Emperor Kex then stood motionless on his crystal throne, his 4 eyes reflecting the dim light of his palace. In 3 millennia of rule, he had never received a report of defeat from any Zephyrian fleet. The very concept was almost incomprehensible. "Summon the War Council," he commanded. Within the hour, the Empire's greatest military minds had assembled in the Emperor's presence. Generals who had conquered dozens of worlds, admirals whose fleets had reduced entire civilizations to ash, and scientists whose weapons could crack planets like eggs. "Explain to me how a primitive species managed to destroy our most advanced fleet," the Emperor demanded. General Vexcol, veteran of 40 successful campaigns, stepped forward. "My lord, based on the limited data we received, it appears the humans developed some form of quantum field manipulation technology. They somehow turned our own weapons against us." "Impossible. Our technology is millennia ahead of theirs." "Perhaps," interjected Chief Scientist Lexman, "but quantum mechanics operates on universal principles. If they discovered the right frequency to disrupt our quantum entanglement fields, then every ship we send to Earth will suffer the same fate," finished Admiral Dexcor. The Emperor's claws scraped against his throne's crystalline surface. "Are you telling me that one backward world has made our entire fleet useless?" "Only within the contaminated system, my lord. The quantum disruption appears to be localized to Earth's solar system. But any ship that enters that space will be vulnerable to the same cascade effect." Emperor Kex then processed this information with a cold calculation that had built an empire spanning 47 star systems. The loss of one fleet, even one as advanced as Admiral Kexthan's, was not strategically significant. The Empire could afford to lose 1,000 such fleets. But the precedent was unacceptable. How long would it take to develop countermeasures? Chief Scientist Lexman consulted his data tablet. "Based on the quantum signature analysis, we would need to completely redesign our fundamental technology. The humans have essentially created an incompatible quantum environment. It would take decades, perhaps centuries, to develop technology that could operate in that contaminated space." "Unacceptable. My lord, perhaps we should consider other approaches. We could bombard the system from outside the quantum disruption field, using conventional kinetic weapons. And achieve what? The destruction of the very resources we sought to claim." The Emperor's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "No, these humans have committed an act of unprecedented defiance. They must be made an example of, or other species may attempt similar resistance." General Vexcol stepped forward. "My lord, if our standard technology cannot operate in Earth's system, perhaps we should consider alternative methods." The Emperor's 4 eyes focused on the general with interest. "Continue. The humans have made their solar system toxic to our quantum technology. But we have other weapons in our arsenal. Biological warfare, stellar manipulation, artificial singularities. Methods that don't rely on quantum field interactions. You're suggesting we exterminate the entire system. I'm suggesting we make an example that will be remembered across the galaxy for millennia. Any species that resists the Empire should face complete extinction." Emperor Kex then considered this proposal. The Zephyrian Empire had never needed to use such extreme measures before. Their technological superiority had always been sufficient to ensure quick, clean conquests that left useful resources intact. But these humans had changed the rules of the game. "Very well. Prepare the stellar weapon. We will turn their sun into a supernova and eliminate the entire system." "My lord," Chief Scientist Lexman interjected carefully, "the stellar weapon has never been tested on a main sequence star. The energy requirements alone would drain the power reserves of an entire sector. Then, we drain them. This human defiance cannot be allowed to inspire others. But, as the Emperor spoke those words, he was unaware that his assumptions about the quantum cascade were fundamentally flawed. Dr. Kenji Nakamura had designed his device not just to disable Zephyrian technology, but to propagate itself through any quantum field interaction. Every time a Zephyrian ship tried to enter Earth's solar system, the cascade effect strengthened. Every quantum communication attempt that connected to the contaminated space spread the instability a little further. Every faster-than-light jump that passed through the affected region carried quantum contamination to its destination. The Empire's response to human resistance was actually accelerating the spread of the very weapon that threatened its technological foundation. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, something unprecedented was happening. Humanity was not only surviving the Zephyrian occupation, but beginning to turn the tide. Without their technological advantages, Zephyrian ground forces found themselves facing opponents who were desperate, numerous, and fighting for their children's lives. The aliens were physically superior, stronger, and faster than humans, but they were accustomed to winning through overwhelming technological superiority. In the ruins of New York City, former Wall Street broker Jennifer Chen led a group of survivors in guerrilla warfare against the aliens. Using weapons salvaged from abandoned military bases and tactics learned from decades of human warfare, her group had managed to destroy 3 Zephyrian extraction facilities. Their personal armor is tough, she explained to other resistance leaders via shortwave radio, but it's not invulnerable. High-velocity, armor-piercing rounds can penetrate it, and they're vulnerable to explosives. Similar reports came from every continent. Human resistance cells were adapting to fight the aliens on equal terms now that the technological imbalance had been eliminated. More importantly, they were capturing Zephyrian equipment and beginning to reverse engineer it. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, working from a hidden laboratory in the ruins of Tokyo, had managed to partially understand Zephyrian biotechnology. Their medical systems are actually quite similar to ours in basic principles, she reported to the Emergency Scientific Council. We might be able to adapt them for human use. But the most significant development was happening in the quantum research facilities that had survived the initial bombardment. Human scientists, now working with captured Zephyrian technology, were beginning to understand the true implications of Dr. Nakamura's cascade device. The quantum contamination isn't just affecting their current technology, Dr. Elena Vasquez reported from the rebuilt CERN facility. It's actually rewriting the quantum field interactions in local space. Any technology based on Zephyrian principles will be incompatible with our solar system for the foreseeable future. How long? Asked Dr. Sarah Kim. Based on my calculations, the effect could last for decades, maybe centuries. We've essentially made our solar system immune to their technology. The implications were staggering. Earth wasn't just surviving the Zephyrian invasion. It was becoming a fortress that the Empire's technology couldn't breach. But Emperor Kek's then, as stellar weapon, didn't rely on quantum technology. And 3 months after the destruction of his flagship, the Emperor was ready to demonstrate the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire. The weapon fired from a distance of 50 light-years, a concentrated beam of exotic matter that would destabilize Earth's sun and turn it into a supernova. The beam would take 50 years to reach its target, but when it arrived, it would eliminate the solar system and send a message to the galaxy that resistance to the Empire was futile. What the Emperor didn't know was that during those same 3 months, the quantum contamination had been spreading throughout Zephyrian space through their own faster-than-light communication networks, and that Dr. Kenji Nakamura's final gift to his dead son was about to reach the Empire's homeworld. The Zephyrians had thought they were untouchable. They were about to learn just how wrong they had been. The quantum contamination reached Zephyr Prime on a Tuesday morning, local time, exactly 6 months and 14 days after little hero Nakamura had been vaporized by an alien targeting error. Emperor Kex then, was reviewing reports from across the Empire when the first systems began to fail. It started small, as these things always did. A communication relay in the outer sectors stopped responding. A patrol ship reported engine malfunctions. A mining operation experienced equipment failures. Then, the cascading began in earnest. My lord, Chief Scientist Lexman burst into the throne room without proper protocol, his usually composed demeanor shattered by panic. The quantum contamination has reached the homeworld. All our quantum-based technology is failing simultaneously. The Emperor's 4 eyes focused on the scientist with predatory intensity. Impossible. The contamination was localized to the Earth system. No, my lord. It's been spreading through our faster-than-light communication network for months. Every quantum transmission has carried microscopic amounts of the contamination, and it's finally reached critical mass throughout our infrastructure. As if to emphasize his point, the lights in the throne room flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in moments later, but the damage to Imperial authority was already done. For the first time in 3 millennia, the crystal throne of the Zephyrian Empire sat in darkness. Across Zephyr Prime, similar scenes played out as the planet's technology began consuming itself. Transportation systems ground to a halt. Communication networks went silent. Even the environmental controls that maintained atmospheric conditions in the underground cities began to fail. Status report, the Emperor commanded. 17 sectors reporting complete technological failure. 23 sectors experiencing partial systems collapse. The Imperial fleet is stranded without functional engines. And our outer colonies... Lexman's voice trailed off. Continue. We've lost contact with 31 worlds, my lord. If the contamination has spread to them as well, their populations may not survive without technological support. Emperor Kex, then, stood from his throne, his 12-foot frame casting shadows in the emergency lighting. For 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Empire had been built on a foundation of technological supremacy, so complete that they had never needed to develop alternatives. Their cities required technology to maintain breathable atmospheres. Their food production relied on quantum-enhanced agriculture. Their transportation, communication, defense, and industrial systems all depended on the same quantum principles that were now turning against them. How long until we can restore functionality? Chief Scientist Lexman consulted his failing data tablet. My lord, I'm not certain we can. The contamination appears to be self-perpetuating. It's rewriting the quantum field interactions that our technology depends on. Even if we could develop new systems, they would need to operate on completely different principles. And how long would that take? Centuries, my lord. Perhaps millennia. The weight of those words settled over the throne room like a death shroud. The empire that had conquered 47 star systems in 3,000 years was facing technological collapse that could take just as long to recover from. My lord, General Vex Cole spoke carefully. What are your orders regarding the stellar weapon? Emperor Kex, then, had almost forgotten about the exotic matter beam currently traveling toward Earth's solar system at near light speed. The weapon was already in flight, powered by energy sources that predated quantum technology. It would reach its target in 49 years, 6 months, and 8 days. Can the weapon be recalled or redirected? No, my lord. The control systems required quantum communication arrays that are no longer functional. So the Emperor's final act of revenge against humanity was beyond his control, a doomsday weapon that would complete its mission long after the empire that created it had collapsed. But as the Zephyrian Empire began its slow death spiral, something extraordinary was happening in Earth's solar system. Humanity was not just surviving, it was thriving. The captured Zephyrian technology, once adapted to work within the quantum-contaminated environment, proved far more advanced than anything humans had previously developed. Scientists worked around the clock to reverse engineer alien systems and integrate them with human designs. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in what had once been CERN's main laboratory, now expanded into a vast underground complex that served as humanity's primary research facility. Around her, Teams of scientists from every nation worked together with a unity that had never existed before the invasion. The fusion reactors are operating at 127% efficiency, reported Dr. Sarah Kim. We've managed to adapt their power systems to work with our modified quantum fields. Medical systems are showing even better results, added Dr. Yuki Tanaka. We've eliminated most genetic diseases and extended human lifespan by an estimated 40%. But the most remarkable development was in transportation technology. Human engineers had modified Zephyrian faster-than-light drives to work within the contaminated quantum environment. Not only could humans now travel between stars, but they were immune to the technological failures that were crippling the Empire. The first colonization ships are ready for launch, announced Captain Rebecca Torres, formerly of the International Space Station. We have volunteer crews prepared to establish human settlements in 12 nearby star systems. Elena nodded approvingly. Earth's population had been devastated by the initial Zephyrian assault, but the survivors were determined to ensure humanity's long-term survival. If the aliens returned with different weapons, humans would already be spread across multiple worlds. What about defensive preparations? The orbital defense platforms are operational, Captain Torres replied. Using modified Zephyrian weapons technology, we can protect Earth from any conventional attack. And the quantum cascade field generators will prevent any of their quantum-based weapons from functioning in our space. Dr. Vasquez smiled grimly. So, if they come back with conventional weapons, we can fight them on equal terms. And if they come back with quantum weapons, their technology will simply fail. Speaking of which, Dr. Tanaka interrupted, we've detected something interesting in the outer solar system. Long-range sensors are picking up what appears to be a directed energy beam approaching from the direction of Zephyrian space. Elena felt her blood chill. How long until it reaches us? At current velocity, approximately 49 years. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Zephyrians had fired one final weapon before their empire collapsed, a revenge shot that would arrive long after everyone who fired it was dead. Can we stop it? Dr. Tanaka shook her head. The energy requirements would be enormous. It's not a ship or missile we can intercept. It appears to be some form of exotic matter beam designed to destabilize stellar matter. They're trying to turn our sun into a supernova. That's our assessment, yes. Elena stared at the display, showing the incoming beam's trajectory. After everything humanity had survived, after adapting to use the aliens' own technology against them, the Zephyrians had managed one final act of spite. 49 years, she said quietly. That gives us time. Time for what? Asked Dr. Kim. To do what humans do best. Adapt and overcome. Over the following months, humanity's greatest minds focused on a single problem: how to survive the destruction of their sun. The answer, when it came, was both elegant and audacious. If the Zephyrians wanted to destroy Earth's solar system, then humanity would simply leave. The plan that emerged was staggering in scope. Using modified Zephyrian technology, humans would construct massive generation ships capable of carrying millions of people to other star systems. But these wouldn't be desperate refugee vessels fleeing destruction. They would be the vanguard of human expansion across the galaxy. We've identified 47 suitable star systems within 50 light-years, reported the Colonial Planning Committee. Each one could support human settlements with minimal terraforming. 47 systems, Elena mused. The same number the Zephyrian Empire controlled at its peak. That's not a coincidence, added Dr. Tanaka. We're specifically targeting systems that were part of their empire. With their technology failing, those colonies will be defenseless. It was a plan born of human audacity and pragmatism. If the Zephyrians wanted to commit genocide against humanity, then humanity would respond by claiming the entire former Zephyrian Empire as its own territory. The generation ships began launching 3 years after the invasion, each one carrying 1 million colonists to establish human settlements throughout known space. They traveled faster than light using modified alien drives, spreading human civilization across the galaxy like seeds scattered by a cosmic wind. By the time the stellar weapon reached Earth's solar system, humanity had already established thriving colonies on 38 worlds. The destruction of Earth's sun would be tragic, but it wouldn't mean extinction for the human race. In fact, it would mark the beginning of humanity's golden age. The generation ships carried more than just people and supplies. They carried the modified quantum cascade technology that Dr. Kenji Nakamura had died to create. Every human settlement became a node in a growing network of quantum contamination that made Zephyrian technology inoperable. As human colonies expanded, they created safe zones where the former empire's technology simply couldn't function. Zephyrian survivors found themselves trapped on dying worlds, watching their civilizations collapse as the quantum contamination spread inexorably through space. Some Zephyrian colonies attempted to negotiate with human settlers, offering surrender in exchange for technological assistance. Most were refused. Humanity remembered the targeting error that had killed a 7-year-old boy working on a puzzle, and mercy was not high on their list of priorities. But a few colonies were different. These were worlds where Zephyrians had opposed the Empire's policies of genocide and conquest. Places where alien scientists had protested the casual extermination of inferior species. To these few, humanity offered a choice: integrate into human society as equals, or face the same technological collapse as the rest of their empire. Most chose integration. 49 years after the Zephyrian invasion, Admiral Serachin Santos stood on the observation deck of the flagship Eternal Vigilance, watching Earth's sun expand into a red giant as the stellar weapon completed its work. She was the daughter of President Sarah Chun and the great-niece of Colonel Maria Santos, both heroes of the Resistance. She had been born in the void between stars aboard one of the first-generation ships, and she had never set foot on the world of her ancestors. But she remembered the stories. She remembered the puzzle piece her grandfather had carried from the ruins of Tokyo, the small fragment of a children's toy that had somehow survived the end of the world. Admiral, her communications officer reported, were receiving surrender transmissions from the last Zephyrian strongholds. With the destruction of their homeworld sun, their remaining leadership is requesting terms. What terms do we offer to the empire that tried to exterminate our species? Ma'am, Admiral Chinsanto smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. Tell them they can surrender unconditionally, and we'll consider allowing them to exist as a client species under human protection. Or they can continue to resist, and we'll continue expanding until their empire is nothing but a footnote in human history books. And if they refuse both options? The Admiral looked out at the expanding stellar matter that had once been Earth's sun, thinking of a little boy who had died for the crime of existing, while alien computers made targeting calculations. Then, they'll discover that humans have long memories, and that killing our children has consequences that echo across the centuries. The Zephyrian Empire, which had once ruled 47 star systems and considered itself untouchable, formally surrendered to humanity 6 months later. The surrender ceremony was held on New Earth, the first world colonized by the generation ships. In the place of honor at the ceremony sat a small display case containing a single puzzle piece depicting Saturn and its rings. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest actions could change the course of history, and that love for a dead child could topple an empire that had endured for 3,000 years. The human expansion into former Zephyrian space continued for another century, until Homo sapiens had established settlements in over 200 star systems. The quantum cascade technology that Dr. Kenji Nakamura had created to avenge his son became the foundation of a new galactic civilization based on human values: freedom, equality, the protection of children above all else. And on every human world, in every city hall and government building, hung a simple plaque with a simple message: in memory of Hiro Nakamura, age 7, who died so that human children might live among the stars. The Zephyrians had thought they were untouchable, but They had learned that there was one thing in the universe more dangerous than superior technology or overwhelming firepower: a parent's love for their child, and the lengths humanity would go to protect the innocent. Some lessons, once learned, could never be forgotten. And the galaxy would never forget what happened when someone killed a human child. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Their crystalline ships moved through space like predators, sleek and deadly, leaving behind trails of conquered worlds and broken civilizations. The Empire stretched across 47 star systems, each one bending the knee to the crystal throne on Zephyr Prime. Admiral Kex then stood on the command deck of the flagship Eternal Dominance, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger in the viewscreen. His 6 arms moved gracefully across the control interface, each digit ending in razor-sharp talons that could slice through metal. The Zephyrians were apex predators by evolution, standing 12 feet tall with exoskeletons that could deflect most energy weapons. "This world appears unremarkable," commented his tactical officer, Velcor, studying the sensor readings. "Single-species dominance, primitive technology, no energy shields protecting their cities." Kexthen's mandibles clicked in amusement. The sound echoed through the bridge, causing several junior officers to flinch. Indeed, these humans barely qualify as space-capable. Their fastest ships would take centuries to reach even their nearest stellar neighbors. How they managed to attract our attention is beyond comprehension. The truth was simpler than the Admiral realized. Earth hadn't attracted their attention through any grand gesture or technological achievement. A Zephyrian scout ship had detected unusual quantum signatures while mapping this spiral arm of the galaxy. The signatures suggested the possibility of rare metals needed for their newest generation of weapons. "Sir, we're receiving multiple communication attempts from the surface," reported the communications officer. "They appear to be trying to establish diplomatic contact." Diplomatic? Kexthen's 4 eyes gleamed with predatory hunger. "How amusing. Inform the planetary leaders that they have exactly 1 solar rotation to surrender unconditionally. After that, we begin the harvest." The harvest was the Zephyrian term for their standard conquest protocol. It involved 3 phases: elimination of military assets, collection of useful resources and technology, and, finally, processing of the population. Some species were deemed useful enough to serve as slaves. Others were simply eliminated to make room for Zephyrian settlements. On Earth, the message was received by every major government simultaneously. President Sarah Chun stood in the Situation Room beneath the White House, surrounded by military advisors and world leaders connected via secure video links. The translator algorithm had worked perfectly, leaving no ambiguity about the aliens' intentions. "One day," she said quietly, "they're giving us 1 day to surrender our entire world." General Morrison leaned forward, his weathered face grim. "Madam President, our best estimates suggest their ship alone could level every major city on Earth. Our nuclear arsenal might scratch their hull plating. What about the International Space Station? Our lunar bases?" They detected and cataloged every artificial satellite we have in orbit, including ones we thought were secret. The general's voice carried decades of military experience, and Sarah could hear the defeat creeping in. "These beings are so far beyond us technologically that resistance seems impossible." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's leading xenobiologist despite never having studied actual aliens before, cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should consider their offer. If we surrender, they might allow our species to survive." "Survive as what?" snapped Colonel Rodriguez from Space Command. "Slaves? Experimental subjects? We know nothing about their culture or intentions beyond conquest." The debate continued for hours while around the globe, humanity struggled to comprehend their situation. Television broadcasts showed people praying, rioting, or simply going about their daily lives as if nothing had changed. Children played in parks while their parents watched the sky with fearful eyes. In Tokyo, 7-year-old Hiro Nakamura sat in his small apartment, working on a puzzle while his mother prepared dinner. He didn't understand why she kept crying or why his father hadn't come home from work. The news kept showing pictures of a giant crystal ship hanging in space like a sword over their world. "Mama, when will Papa come home?" Hiro asked, looking up from his puzzle. Yuki Nakamura knelt beside her son, gathering him into a fierce hug. "Soon, little one. Papa is working very hard right now to keep us safe." It wasn't entirely a lie. Hiro's father was indeed working, along with millions of other humans around the world. Scientists, engineers, military personnel, and ordinary citizens were all desperately searching for some way to defend their planet. The problem was simple. Humanity's most advanced weapons were like stone knives against the Zephyrian Empire's technology. Back on the flagship, Admiral Kex then reviewed the intelligence reports gathered by their sensors. "These humans are more numerous than initially estimated," he noted. "Nearly 8 billion individuals across their single world." "Shall we revise the harvest projections?" asked Velcor. "No, the projections remain unchanged. We need only a few thousand specimens for biological research. The rest will be eliminated to make room for our new mining operations." The Zephyrians had perfected the art of conquest through overwhelming technological superiority. They had never encountered a species that could meaningfully resist their advance. Their exoskeletons were nearly indestructible, their ships could destroy planets, and their weapons could kill from distances measured in star systems. What they hadn't encountered was a species quite like humanity. As Earth's Day of Grace ticked toward its end, something unexpected began happening in cities around the world. Instead of panic or mass surrender, humans began organizing. Not just governments and militaries, but ordinary people. Teachers evacuated students to underground shelters while mechanics and engineers worked frantically to weaponize anything they could find. In rural areas, farmers and hunters gathered whatever weapons they possessed. In urban centers, police and firefighters coordinated evacuation plans that could save as many people as possible when the attack began. Scientists shared decades of research freely, hoping someone, somewhere, might find a weakness in alien technology. Most importantly, parents everywhere held their children a little tighter and made the same silent promise Yuki Nakamura made to little Hiro, that they would fight for their children's future with everything they had. The Zephyrians, monitoring these activities through their sensors, found the behavior curious but irrelevant. What could primitive weapons do against their superior technology? They had conquered species with energy weapons, planetary defense shields, and faster-than-light travel. These humans had none of those advantages. As the deadline approached, President Chun stood before the cameras one final time. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "We face an enemy beyond our comprehension. They have given us a choice: surrender or fight. I know what choice our ancestors would have made. I know what choice we must make. We are humanity. We do not surrender our children's future to anyone." The transmission ended just as the deadline expired. Admiral Kex then watched the primitive broadcast with amusement before giving the order that would begin humanity's darkest hour. Begin the harvest. Start with their largest population centers. The first energy beam struck London at precisely midnight Greenwich Mean Time. The ancient city, home to 9 million people, simply vanished in a flash of coherent energy. The Thames boiled away to steam, and where Parliament had stood for centuries, only a perfectly smooth crater remained. Then came Paris, then Delhi, then Tokyo. Each strike took only seconds and eliminated millions of lives with casual efficiency. The Zephyrians targeted population centers first, intending to break humanity's will to resist before moving on to resource extraction. But something went wrong with their calculations in Tokyo. The energy beam, precisely calibrated to eliminate the city center, encountered an unexpected quantum resonance in the upper atmosphere. A solar flare, one of the largest in recorded history, struck Earth's magnetosphere at the exact moment the beam fired. The energy weapons targeting system, confused by the electromagnetic interference, shifted its aim by exactly 1.7 kilometers. Instead of hitting the government district as planned, the beam struck a small residential area in the Shibuya district. Among the buildings that vanished in that instant was a small apartment where a 7-year-old boy had been working on a puzzle while his mother prepared dinner. Hiro Nakamura died instantly, painlessly, along with his mother and 3,000 other innocent people. His father, working late at the Defense Ministry, felt the ground shake and saw the flash of light illuminate the night sky. Racing home through streets filled with chaos and fear, he found only a perfect circular crater where his family's apartment building had stood. Yuki Tanaka's husband, Dr. Kenji Nakamura, was a quiet man who taught mathematics at Tokyo University. He had never raised his voice in anger, never thrown a punch, never even killed an insect if he could avoid it. But as he knelt at the edge of that crater, holding a small puzzle piece that had somehow survived the destruction, something fundamental changed in the fabric of reality. Because what the Zephyrians didn't understand about humans was simple, but crucial. They were a species that would burn down the entire galaxy to protect their children. And someone had just killed a human child.